In this episode, Lindsay tells us her story about how she lives life by her own rules and how she splits her time between Canada and Bali. Hi, everyone. You're listening to the Bold Little Minds Momcast, a podcast where we talk to incredible moms who share their unique journey to motherhood, practical tips, and some of our favorite low-prep activities so you can enjoy that hot cup of coffee. I'm your host, Krissy. I'm a mom of 2 boys. I'm glad you're here with us, so pop in your earbuds and let's have some fun. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode of the Bold Little Minds Momcast. My name is Krissy. I'm a stay-at-home mom to 2 young boys, and we are in my youngest son's birthday month. He's going to be 2 at the end of this month. I can't believe it. These first 2 years go by so fast. I mean, all of them do. But the first 2 years, I feel like they develop from these potatoes to these full-grown, walking, talking kids. It's unbelievable to see their journey. And we all know that the age of 2 is even more wild than the first 2 that came before. There are so many more emotions and so many more things that they're learning. Their little brains are developing so rapidly that sometimes they don't know how to keep up with it. I think it's such a fun age. Understanding the development that's happening in their brains has really helped me as a mom to navigate this 2-year-old stage. Knowing that it's not something that I'm doing or something that they're doing on purpose, that they're just having a really hard time, really helps me get through the tough times with them. It really helps to understand that they're just craving connection and they need the help regulating and they really just need support figuring out the world as they're really starting to understand their place in it. You'll find out over the course of the next few months if that's truly how it's going to go this time around because each kid is so different and you just never know. So send me your strength as we navigate the 2-year-old phase because you know that no matter how strong you are, you need that support. We have made it through daylight savings time. I hope you all got through it unscathed. I know a change in routine is hard for anybody, especially for our little ones. For me, I didn't do anything to prepare for this. I'm actually looking forward to my kids going to bed an hour earlier. As you know, bedtime has been really rough for us, so if we just don't adjust, then perhaps they'll go to bed at an earlier time. I know that they'll be waking up earlier, but it can't be too much earlier than it already is anyway. So we'll see how that goes. I think sometimes when they wake up at 4 and not 5, even though that's what their biological clock is saying, it's a little easier to put them to bed. It's darker and they sleep a little longer. Right now, they've been waking up around 7, so I'm totally okay with a 6 o'clock wake up. And I'm hoping that the earlier bedtime sticks and that we can still get that stretch of time. We'll see. You'll find out in the next couple weeks. I swapped out some of the pages of my 3-year-old's activity menu this week, and I'm so excited for him to see the new activities I put in. I took some of the Halloween ones out. I left in some of the fall, but I put in some more that are more about independent choice because we know these 3.5-year-olds crave independence. And that's what I'm seeing a lot from my little guy. I put in some pages that give him some choice, like, what would you like to do today? This is a page that has all kinds of activities that he might want to do and that he can circle or talk about or pretend or imagine. And it just gets that conversation going of what might he want to play with. And I also included what should I wear today? Because as we're changing seasons, I mean, the weather here has been wild. It's gone from 80 degrees to 40 degrees and everywhere in between. So this is going to be really helpful for him to talk about the weather, but also how it impacts him and give him some more autonomy into choosing what to wear. He has a tough time deciding on clothes. He only really wants to wear a few certain shirts and pants, and when they're all dirty, then he has to go with what's in the drawer. So hopefully having this kind of choice will minimize the choice that he might not have when I haven't kept up on the laundry enough. Because let's be real, toddlers go through clothes really fast, and sometimes having 4 shirts that you'll rotate through is not enough time for mom to keep up with laundry. I'll share the pages that I'm using in my activity menu over on my social media. You can join me on Instagram at Bold Little Minds. And if you're interested in an activity menu for your little ones, you can find them on Etsy. And you can use the coupon code PODCAST for a special 10% discount just for you, my listeners. And if you're local, message me for an even bigger discount on local pickup. I can't believe we're already on the 13th episode of this podcast. It has been so much fun to put together, and it's fun learning and evolving and trying to make this even better. And it's definitely better because of you. Having a community has been so important. I'd love for you to take a moment to leave a quick rating. Click those 5 stars on Apple or Spotify, or if you're on YouTube, you can click that thumbs up and leave a little comment. That really helps. Make sure you subscribe on any of the networks that you have available to you and share with your friends. The best way we can grow our podcast is by word of mouth and personal recommendations. There's so much to listen to out there, and I really appreciate you giving me some of your time to listen to this podcast. I've booked interviews and planned episodes all the way through the end of January. I can't believe it, so I'm excited to share some of these great stories and valuable content with you. This week, we hear from Lindsay. I was a guest on Lindsay's podcast last week. She released the episode on Thursday, so if you're on my Instagram, you probably saw some of that. It was so fun to talk to Lindsay 2 times in a row, to be on both sides of the microphone. In this episode, Lindsay talks about living life by her own rules. We talk a lot about how nothing is permanent and how you can make decisions and give things a try. This is a mom who is not afraid to take a risk and try something that's totally outside of the norm. You'll hear how she splits her time between Bali and Canada, both with and without her children. Lindsay is an amazing mom. If you like listening to her story, you'll want to hear the bonus episode. The bonus episode is free, and we talk more about how her children are with the transition between the two countries. We also hear about how she takes care of herself while single parenting from across the world. You'll definitely want to check out Lindsay's podcast, Breaking Free with Lindsay, especially if you're interested in hearing my story. I was so happy to talk about some of my background as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. For some reason, about the first minute of the podcast, my audio was all crackly, but if you can get through the first minute, it sounds really good after that. So bear with me, and I hope you enjoy the show. Thank you so much for joining me in the Bold Little Minds Momcast. My name is Krissy. I'm a mom of 2 young kids, ages 3.5 and almost 2. And I am here today with Lindsay, who is also a mom of 2, but her kids are ages 8 and 10. Lindsay helps women shed their limiting beliefs, societal expectations, and fears and thought patterns that have been holding them back so they can fully trust their intuition, courageously follow their dreams. She lives between Canada and Bali, co-parenting her 2 kids internationally. And she has a podcast, Breaking Free with Lindsay, which you'll hear me on fairly soon, or maybe you already have, depending on how this all comes out. Thank you so much for joining me today, Lindsay.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation today.
Me too. We had our conversation on your podcast already. So we've already had kind of like a warm up of each other's vibes, and we talked before this, and it's just been so much fun interacting with you. So I'm excited to hear your story.
Yeah, 100%. We vibed right away, so this will be a good conversation.
Absolutely. So tell me, what was your life like? Who were you before you became a mom?
Yeah, I was just saying to you before we hit record that it's been so long. So my oldest is 10. I was working full time. I was climbing the corporate ladder. I had got to a point in my career that I had sort of made it to the top as far as I could go at that particular organization anyways. And when I got to the top, I just felt like, oh, was this the rest of my life? And so I was kind of like in this limbo period for a very long time of knowing I was not meant to be there, but also not sure where I was supposed to be. And I had this instinct that what I was meant to do with my life would change when I had kids. It took a year and a half to get pregnant, and I went on this massive inner growth journey during that time where I learned to trust my intuition, to listen to my body, to slow down. I got a little bit more into understanding, a little bit about diet and health.
Sure.
I had this sort of aha moment, and it's kind of offensive for some people, but it was a really, really helpful aha moment for me. And it was like, Lindsay, you want to get pregnant for the same reason you want a new pair of shoes, because you think it'll make you happy. And it was just like that contrast. I know that is slightly offensive, but it was just like, you want it because it'll make you happy. And so my ultimate result is that I want to be happier. So I focused on the things in my life, what needed to change in my life. How did my priorities need to reorganize themselves to start making myself happier and more deeply fulfilled?
So tell me now, your life was this way. You found these ways to make yourself happier through it. And then you became a mom. And what was that transition like for you?
I mean, I describe becoming a mother like someone took my entire being, threw it on the floor, shattering it to pieces,
Yep.
and I was just kind of left to reassemble myself in a different way. Like it was so hard for me. I went from like this super successful career where I knew what I was doing. I was well respected. People came to me for help. And then I was at home by myself with a baby. I had no idea what I was doing. I was so sleep deprived and just like, I remember timing my daughter and how much she was nursing. It was like 3.5 to 5 hours a day. She was on my boob. I'm like, that's like a part-time job.
Yep.
Like, what is happening right now? And I just it completely caught me off guard. It was funny because, like, I had done so much worrying about the actual birth and delivery process
Mhm.
that it hadn't even occurred to me to think about what it would be like to have a baby.
Yeah.
Like, and it sounds so bizarre to say out loud because obviously I'd wanted this baby forever, but I was so afraid of birth
Yeah.
that it just occupied my mind to a point where I remember, like, I was I had a home birth, a water birth, and I remember just, like, my daughter coming out, and I'm like, "Oh, it's over," and I just, like, put my head back and relax, and my midwife was like, "Lindsay, look at your baby," and I was literally like, "Oh, yeah,
Oh, right.
there's more to this."
There's a there's a big part left.
So, I really had I had a lot of learning to do on the go, and I also just feel like, in I'll say our culture, this Western culture, like you're not super well supported, or at least I wasn't super well supported. Knowing what I know now about like fourth trimester stuff and just like taking it easy and let other people take care of you, like I had no idea. My mind was just like, I can do it. I'm capable. I'm told I can do everything. Just power through. Don't let anyone see you're struggling. I was resistant to help, like, which is, I look back on that now and I'm like, what were you thinking, Lindsay?
Mm.
But it was a really hard transition into motherhood because of so much of my conditioning. And then as my daughter grew, it got easier. Because of her, I started a blog and I just felt like, I think a lot of moms just have this creative spark or they know there's something more. And so for me, it was just like, I'm going to start a blog. I have no idea why.
Yep.
And I just started to then pull, like, just follow these breadcrumbs of, what ultimately transitioned in my career. But it was because of this journey into motherhood that really was life changing from like a lifestyle point of view, but also just like so much inner work came up. There's so much, like, I became a different person, not only because I had to care for her, but I had to let go of so much of my, I'll say, control issues and my, need for a tidy home or,
Yeah.
again, all the conditioning, right? So I became a different person. And then that affected my marriage, just with this shifting of rules. Not bad, not good, but it was just like all these little things that I never ever expected, anticipated, was aware of, thought of. I was on a 1-year mat leave because we get
Oh,
those in
right.
Canada, and then went back to work. So like my our the roles in our marriage changed, when I was staying at home, then back to work, and then second kid, and then back to work. Like it just kept things just kept changing and evolving. And I think that's one of of motherhood, or the beautiful things about motherhood, is that it's a continued evolution. And, if you think about, our child goes from being 100% dependent on us to fully independent.
Right.
And the whole process of parenting is about letting go. And for someone who likes control, or like way more liked it back then,
Right.
and it was attached to it, I'm like, okay, it's been it's been a road.
Oh, that is yes, it is like it is the most wild thing, and it's so lonely when you're in those moments where your life is shattered because you think then because nobody talk or people don't talk about it as much as they should, that I'm the only one that this has ever happened to. I think part of it is we forget, right? It's that whole idea of we forget what childbirth is like, so that way you'll do it again. We forget what those early days were like, so that way you'll do it again. You won't be terrified of it. It's evolutionary, I guess. But even still, it's almost seen as like a rite of passage. So when you'll reach out to help or talk to people, often I receive like, oh yeah, I know that was hard. Like, yeah, but what? That's it? That's all? That's where it ends? Unbelievable.
One of my previous businesses was I did parenting coaching, positive parenting coaching. And when I was writing my book and going through the editing process, I had about 10 to 12 moms going through the editing process. And I commented, like, there was a section in there describing what I just described to you, the shattering of identity. And every single one of them commented on it. And I would say like 50-50, like the women were just like, yes, 100%, that's me. And then the others were just like, I have no idea what you're
Yeah.
talking about, Lindsay. So it was really, that was interesting. So just know that, like, if you are listening to this and you're going through this, like, you are absolutely not alone. You're not going crazy. And there's really nothing wrong with you.
Your parenting has looked a lot of different ways throughout. You were working full time, you were homeschooling. Tell me about all these different hats, all these different ways that parenting has looked for you.
Yeah, it's been a ride. So initially, I was working full time and my kids were in childcare first and then school, and then pulled them out to homeschool. Actually, before that, I had quit my job because, for all the reasons sort of I just listed, of just like, I knew there was something different. My quality of life was so low with my family. And I was just like, something needs to change. This cannot be my life. So I actually quit my job. I had started a positive parenting coaching business that was sort of like an evolution of the blog I first started.
Yeah.
It just sort of led into that business naturally. And right before COVID, I had walked away from my job to do that. Went through, all the shutdowns, put my kids back in school, lockdowns, online,
Yeah.
back in school, like all of the things. And then it just got to a point where my daughter's stress level, like, we had to do something. It was just like the school, whatever was happening at the school was just not good. It was very clear that we needed to get her out of there. And so I kind of dropped everything and started homeschooling. And I had this like idealistic view of just like, oh, it'd be so nice to homeschool. But I would have never done it had it not been like urgent and pressing. So we continued for school throughout our homeschooling journey. I think I homeschooled for like a year and a half, 2 years ish. And it was like the best experience because, I had those slower days. I had quality time with my kids. We were just getting along so well. We built this really beautiful life. And then my marriage fell apart because what happened was, sort of without me working, my husband was just like, okay, I need to work more. And then so he felt like he needed to work more. The less he was around, the less competent he felt
Mhm.
when he came home and we're just like happily living our lives. And then he was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. So it was just like this cycle that we couldn't get out of in that respect. And then when we parted ways, I'm like, okay, I had put my parenting business sort of on hold to do homeschooling. And it really just sort of like that creativity, that passion for that business just sort of faded away. So, like, yeah, I could have done that business, but it just sort of died out of me. And then I was faced with this, okay, I don't want to go back and get a job and put my kids back in school because I love the life that we built. I just need to figure out the income piece now. And because I had that contrast, I knew what that hamster wheel looked like. I knew what it was like to work full time. I'm like, I definitely know I don't want that.
Right.
Let me try to do something different. And so at that time, I had really been dreaming about traveling, thinking there's no way I could do it. I didn't have money, like all of this stuff. But I just like sat dreaming in my head, and then I just decided to cash in some savings and say, like, you know what? I'm going to go travel for 5 months and I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to trust myself to figure this out along the way because I knew the life that I wanted. I just needed to figure out the income piece. And I'm like, this is like, I don't want my kids back in the public school system. I know that this is possible because I've seen other people, like mostly online,
Sure.
do this. I need to figure this out. And we started traveling. We looked at Costa Rica because I wanted to live outside of Canada. I didn't just want to like, hop around on vacation.
Yep.
So I spent 2 months in Costa Rica with my kids, and just exploring that as an option. I continue to homeschool them. We went to Mexico actually as a family. So their dad was there. His parents live in Mexico. So we actually spent a month together in
Oh,
Mexico,
nice.
sort of post separation, figuring we would do Christmas together. So continue to homeschool. And then the hard part, it was, I had sort of, in terms of like testing this, like, could I actually live in another country? What would that actually look like? I had the kids for the first 2 months. We did then that 3rd month together, and then it was his turn to have the kids for 2 months,
Oh,
where I was gonna go to Bali, and Bali was just a pull of the intuition, but it was just like, "Okay, now I'm going to leave my kids for 2 months," having been, like, not pretty much inseparable for at least the last couple of years.
right.
They're going back into the school system, which I do not want, and they're with their dad who hasn't really, like, been a parent for the last, at least a year or more,
Sure.
and so it was just like, you know, it was just this rattling of, like, "What am I doing?" Like, it was so deeply uncomfortable, it brought up so many emotions. I was just like, "What kind of mother leaves her kids for 2 months?" And the thing about, like, that travel piece and that evolution piece, I knew I could get to Bali and, like, get on a plane and come back. Like, the worst case scenario is I would be out some money, which I didn't want to do, but, like, I could change my mind at any time, at any point, and at any point I could come back and get a job. Like, it just but I knew what I wanted. I knew I needed, like, my intuition was so strong, was like, "Go to Bali, meet people to help you figure out your life." And I was like, "I don't even know where to start with that," but, like, it was so strong. I'm like, "Okay, I'm just gonna trust." My kids transitioned really well back into the public school system. They had amazing teachers for that first part. Honestly, if I could start school mid-year every year, I would, because I got, like, we met the teachers right away. They
Wow.
chatted with us at the end of the day. Like, if you start school in September, it's like very hands off. Like,
Right.
just drop your kids, run. We'll see you like in a couple of weeks at like meet the teacher night.
Right. Because
And you have
everyone's
no
like
idea what's happening.
running in
Yeah,
marathon at full speed. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So they went back into the school system. They were there for that full calendar year. So 2 half school years. And then I ended up pulling them out and taking them to Bali for 6 months, where
Wow.
they attended an international school that was just, like, so in alignment with my values and how I wanted them, even just simple things like they didn't have to ask to go to the bathroom, they were just trusted to, just be more independent, like, just, like, yeah, let them be kids, not just, like, micromanaging them. And in Bali, like, for 6 months, I was solo parenting by myself in a foreign country, on the other side of the world. It's a 12-hour time
Yeah.
difference. It's about, 24 hours in air for the flight, so it's not like a quick trip
Wow.
home or for anyone to visit. So that was another experience, and then now they're back in the school system for, at least 4 months.
Sure.
They're
Yeah.
committed to 4 months. But the overall arching, you know, I know people sort of look at this like inconsistency of education. All I really care about is, are they progressing in reading, writing, math? Do they want to continue learning? Are they still enjoying learning? And I don't really care about the rest. I want them to know that there's not just one way of doing something, there's not just one way of thinking, and I really want them to have this wide range of experience to pull from, because then when it comes to them designing their life as they get older, like, they're going to have just like this bigger, this broader perspective that will hopefully, like, just help them thrive in life. So there's really just like this long-term vision, and there's of course these short-term hiccups and ins and outs and transitions and all that, but it's really like this, I want them to be critical thinkers, and I want them to know that they do not have to live by anyone else's script.
Look at you with all these ways of like letting go. Like this theme keeps coming back. It's not just letting go of your expectations for yourself, but even like educationally thinking about your own objectives for your kids and then letting go of the rest because it's working out. So, my favorite thing to talk about in this podcast is to hear what everybody's little tricks and tips are for helping their kids stay entertained. Like, we obviously want our kids to be able to play by themselves or have this great imagination, creativity, but sometimes they need a little prompting and a little help. So when you need to get something done and they are just driving you nuts, what is your favorite go-to easy low prep activity?
You know what? It's a little more like free range paint tape. You know,
Yes.
paint tape that you can just stick to anything and it
Mhm.
doesn't matter. Like that has been like a staple in my household from like toddler years because I feel like tape, I even like yarn. If they can cut tape, they can cut yarn, they can cut paper. So it's just like paper, markers, tape, and sometimes yarn. And the stuff they create is just phenomenal and it just keeps them occupied. So, yeah, not like a specific activity,
Yep.
but like I cannot underscore the paint tape enough.
We are big fans as well. I have all of the colors in a bin that I keep locked away because if I don't, then it's just everywhere, which is great when I want it to be, but not when I don't want it to be. So when I pull it out, like the little one is just ripping apart the roll, and sometimes my older one is starting to get to the point where he's building, but we love making like collages. I'll put little pieces of it all over the walls and they take them and they put them on a piece of paper. We make this like I don't know,
Yeah.
Jackson Pollock type thing, and it's a lot of fun. So, yes, I can second this as an easy go-to activity as well.
Amazing. Even like with little kids,
Yep.
having a roll of tape like that on an airplane where they just like peel off and stick to the
Yes.
seat in front or just like what
Yeah.
just I don't know.
You could just put yeah,
It's
exactly, put a whole piece of tape, nothing fancy on it, and there that dexterity, that focus to try to rip it off, like, my little one is destructo. He just destroys everything. That is his role in life at the moment. Is that's whatever play schema this is, it's terrible. But he just wants to destroy, and having tape anywhere like that, it gives him something purposeful to destroy, so it's great.
I love it.
This has been such a wonderful conversation. I've loved hearing about all of the different things that you've put into place to live this life that feels so meaningful and I can tell you genuinely love, which is really refreshing and really great and you're figuring out how to make your parenting work within this role. Do you have any final takeaways for us?
You know what? What popped into my mind just as you were saying that
Mm,
is just like you get to make the
yeah.
rules of your own life and your parenting gets to look however you want it to look. And the only reason it doesn't is because you're either attached to this idea that you have or you're worried about what other people think. And if you can just like relax and like pull apart those layers that are keeping you sort of, in a life that maybe you don't it isn't quite jiving. Yeah, like you get to create the rules of your own life. It gets to be really that simple.
I love it, and I think you hit a important point too that I wanna reiterate, we talked about it on your podcast as well, is it's not permanent, like, you can try it and
Yeah.
change your mind, you don't have to be doing this for the rest of your life, so why not?
Yeah, you can change your mind at any time. You can shift and if you don't take steps forward towards what you want, like you will never get there, but you get more information as the more steps you take and you get a new perspective the further you go. So just like take those steps forward knowing that you can shift and pivot at literally any time.
Yeah,
There is no decision is ever permanent.
I love it. Where can people find you?
Yeah, they can find me at Breaking Free with Lindsay. That's the name of my podcast, my Instagram, my Facebook, and my website. So Breaking Free with Lindsay, Lindsay with an A.
Love it, and I will link that in the show notes as well. Please take a moment to leave a quick little rating and review. Click those 5 stars and make sure you subscribe on whatever system, whatever platform you're watching or listening to us on. I have a free Substack that I've started that will contain an abridged and a bonus episode of this conversation. You can find me at Bold Little Minds on TikTok, Facebook, or Instagram. I guess Instagram's my number one. If you'd like to share your story, please reach out to me. You can email me at boldlittleminds.com or DM me on any of the social media platforms. You can listen to the rest of what we talked about completely for free on Substack, and you can subscribe there for free to have all of it sent directly to your mailbox, including a blog summary of what we discussed. Make sure you share with your friends if you enjoyed our episode, and I look forward to seeing you next time. This is the end of Lindsay's episode, but it is not the end of Lindsay's story. You can hear more from Lindsay on the bonus episode. In the bonus episode, we hear more from Lindsay about how her children transition from going back and forth between Canada to Bali and how she takes care of herself while single parenting from across the world. You can find the link to the free bonus episode in the show notes. I hope to see you there.